What's up guys, this is Mike, the Detroit Borg, and it's great to be back with some new hardware from Apple. So Apple has updated the 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar. So in terms of the 13-inch, the big new bullet points here include the new 8th generation quad-core CPUs replacing the dual-core. We also get a True Tone display, hands-free Siri command, and the more important design change here is a redesigned 3rd generation butterfly keyboard, which is designed to be quieter and more reliable. Some other minor tweaks include Bluetooth 5.0, a redesigned Option key symbol, and we also get symmetrical Thunderbolt 3 ports. Both the left and right side have the exact same speed this time. The standard configuration starts off at $1799, and that gets you a 2.3 GHz Core i5. You can upgrade to a 2.7 GHz Core i7. 8 gigs of RAM is standard, but you can upgrade to 16 gigs for $200. I think that might be worth the upgrade price. In terms of the RAM specs, it's LPDDR3, which is the same as last year, which is clocked at 2133 MHz. In terms of storage, 256 is standard, but you can upgrade all the way up to 2 terabytes for a mere $1,400. And of course, it's available in silver or space gray. First up, we have some paperwork, and the paperwork is pretty familiar. Of course, we have a quick start guide. In this case, it's highlighting High Sierra. We also get a set of Apple stickers and some warranty info. In terms of our power adapter, again, this is 61 watts with a USB Type-C connector. Now, this adapter is a pretty familiar design by now. We have folding prongs, which can be pulled off to add an extension cable or swap out for international wall adapters. But this is actually a redesigned power adapter, at least internally. Inside, it has been cushioned for better shock protection, but they've also replaced the metal USB-C connector for a plastic design. Not sure why they did this, but it might be more durable. Now, the setup in this case is slightly different to take advantage of some of the new features with this MacBook Pro. Now, this is the first Mac to use the Siri wake up command. So just like an iOS device or your HomePod, you can now use your voice for hands-free Siri interaction. And of course, you have to train your voice in order for this feature to work. Now, this works thanks to the T2 chip and the 3 microphone array. Similar to iOS, the T2 chip allows the computer to monitor for your voice using very little power. So as long as the computer is open, you can command Siri even when it's locked or sleeping.
The weather's looking good on Sunday. Up to 77 degrees.
Also new to the Mac, but not new to iOS, is True Tone. So again, we get a demonstration of how the True Tone display works. So in addition to brightness, the adaptive sensors will also measure for color temperature. So this will reflect the ambient lighting conditions of the room the computer is in. And what's great is True Tone extends to attached displays like the LG 5K display or the Thunderbolt display. And even the Touch Bar is using True Tone to match the display on the MacBook, so that's pretty impressive. Now, because True Tone needs to use the ambient light sensors and the T2 chip in the MacBook Pro to adapt the display color temperature, this will not work if the lid of the MacBook Pro is closed. So for attached displays, if you want to take advantage of True Tone, you'll need to make sure your MacBook Pro is open. The display is covered edge to edge with a glass panel with a nice anti-reflective coating, so although we have a glossy display, it does one of the best jobs in terms of mitigating glare that I've seen on any other laptop. The IPS display, once again, is 13.3 inches with a resolution of 2560 by 1600. That's good for 227 pixels per inch. We get 500 nits of maximum brightness along with the wide color spectrum of the DCI-P3 spec. We still have a 720p FaceTime HD camera in the same location as before with an LED indicator along with our ambient light sensors. In terms of the Touch Bar, once again this replaces the traditional function key row for a contextually aware and interactive OLED display. It's still a really nice looking design and I discover new uses for it every time, but it's still something you have to consciously look at to use. Face ID didn't make it to the MacBooks just yet, but Touch ID is still here at the right edge of the Touch Bar. So again, this is the same Touch ID 2 sensor, so it's pretty quick and accurate. You can use it for unlocking your MacBook or for authenticating for passwords or payment. The glass Force Touch trackpad is still here as well, so once again, instead of a mechanical trackpad, we have a taptic motor that replicates physical clicks. Again, it's pressure sensitive, which gives you a new layer to the user interface, and is still one of the best trackpads on any laptop. There is one visual tweak that's unique to the 2018 model, and that's a slightly redesigned symbol on the Option key, which is a bit taller than it was from the 2017 redesign. So I'm not sure why they keep changing this, but hopefully they've settled on this and they can roll this out to other keyboards later this year. Once again, we get a backlit keyboard with individual LED lights for each key, so it's a very clean looking backlight. But by far the most important news here is that Apple has added a silicone layer underneath each keycap, which is designed to mitigate dust intrusion so it won't interfere with the operation of the keys. But this also changes the clicking tone of the keys. It's not necessarily quieter, but it's less annoying. So let's go ahead and take a listen to them side by side. Now personally, I've been a big fan of this keyboard design since it came out because it's so fast. There's less mechanical action and the keys are extremely solid and wide, so you can hit the keys really quickly and accurately. And this third generation for the most part feels exactly the same, but it's a little softer sounding, and initially it doesn't feel quite as crisp as the second generation, but if I wasn't comparing them side by side, I wouldn't know the difference. Now, ventilation is going to be very important for this computer because of those quad-core chips. And if you go for the i7, you want to make sure this computer can breathe very well. Now, there's lots of ventilation here, but it's pretty well hidden. So you'll find ventilation inside the hinge as before, but you'll also find ventilation along the bottom side edge, which is also part of the speaker design. Apple also redesigned the internal speaker system. So although the speaker grills on the top are still fake outlets, the speakers actually come from the vents on the side. The speakers and the chambers have been redesigned for the new larger battery, and the effect here is definitely an improvement. To my ears, it's not louder, but the quality of the sound has improved slightly. So there's less of that tinny or muffled sound and more of a fuller, wider sound.
Captain Christopher Pike requests permission to come aboard.
Well, Commander, this is awkward, but the best way to get into a cold stream is to jump right in. I'm here to take command of the Discovery under Regulation 19, Section C.
The bottom of the MacBook has a single removable panel which is fastened with pentalobe screws and is protected by 4 black plastic feet. However, this computer really is not user upgradable. Everything is glued, soldered, and otherwise permanently fixed to the motherboard of this computer. So make sure you get the configuration you want from the store because you can't change it later. We still get 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and a headphone jack, but this time the ports on the right side have the same 40 gigs per second throughput as the ports on the left side. Previously, only the 15-inch MacBook Pro offered this capability, but we finally get it in the 13-inch. So 2 years later, this 4-port design is still kind of a headache for a lot of people because you'll need some adapters to use legacy peripherals, but these high-speed ports can drive a 5K display, high-speed storage, and most recently, an external GPU. Apple even worked with Blackmagic on an external GPU design, which I'll feature in a separate video. Apple did redesign the battery pack here from 5-cell to 6-cell, and it's larger, up to 58 watt-hours from 54.5 watt-hours. Now that doesn't mean we have more battery life, it's still 10 hours, but this offsets the power demands of the new quad-core CPUs. Also interesting is that although they've increased the size of the battery, they've kept the weight the same by shaving the chassis down just slightly. Now taking a look at our synthetic benchmarks, comparing this to the same spec version from the last generation, we can see this is one of the biggest spec bumps we've seen for a MacBook Pro since 2011. So when it comes to Geekbench, the single core score is up modestly, but the multi-core score, going from 2-core to quad cores, is a huge difference. We go from about 8,800 to over 15,000 or closer to 16,000. Graphics performance is up only slightly. So again, we have an integrated GPU. There is no dedicated GPU on the 13-inch model. And this time it's the Intel Iris Plus 655 chip. This replaces the standard 650 chip from last generation. So with Cinebench, despite the massive CPU gains, almost twice the performance of the previous design, the OpenGL score is only separated by a few frames per second. SSD speeds are unchanged from the last generation, which is to say they're extremely fast. There is one side effect of these powerful chips that I noticed during my benchmarking, and that's the fact that these get quite hot under load, so the fans tend to spool up more so than they did with the dual-core processors. Of course, that's the trade-off of more power. You get better performance, but you also get more heat. That isn't to say that this computer runs hot all the time, just when it's under load. Speaking of which, one of the biggest controversies with this MacBook Pro when it first launched was thermal throttling, which was just recently fixed with a patch. So now we get consistently superior performance to the previous laptop. So ultimately, this really is a significant update. It fixes one of the biggest uncertainties about the previous design, which was the keyboard, and makes a significant upgrade to the CPU. But this remains a very expensive computer. This really is for people who know they need the tools that this machine offers. Otherwise, it's kind of an extravagance that really goes unused. Which makes it unfortunate that they did not at least add the revised keyboard to the baseline MacBook Pro with a function key row. Now, if you want even more Pro features, I will be covering the new 15-inch MacBook Pro with the Core i9 CPU and 32 gigs of RAM. So make sure you stay tuned for that video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and if you did, please let me know with a like, and I'll see you again in the next video.